All right, let's strip life down to its absolute essentials. We're going to go on a little journey today to understand the two huge fundamental problems that every single living thing on this planet, I'm talking from the tiniest blade of grass to the most powerful lion, has had to solve just to be here.
So, what are these two giant universal challenges? Well, it really just boils down to this. First, how do you get the energy you need to live, to move and to grow? And second, once you figured that out, how do you create a legacy? How do you pass your unique blueprint onto the next generation? It's really all about fueling up and then passing the torch. So let's tackle that first quest, the constant, relentless pursuit of energy. I mean, it's the engine that drives literally everything in life. And nature's solution is this really elegant, interconnected system that we call the food chain. This is the story of how energy, which all starts with the sun, gets passed from one living thing to another. Every great meal has to start with a chef, right? Well, in the natural world, those chefs are called producers. These are these incredible organisms, mostly plants, that don't need to go out hunting for food because they make their own. They're totally self-sufficient, and they are the foundation for almost all life on Earth. So how do they pull this off? It's through an amazing process called photosynthesis. You can think of it like a tiny solar-powered factory inside every single leaf. They pull in water and nutrients from the soil, they grab carbon dioxide right out of the air, and they use the sun's light as their power source. And the result? They create sugar, which is pure energy. And as a fantastic little bonus for us, they release the oxygen we need to breathe. Okay, so if the producers are the chefs, then pretty much everyone else, we're the diners. We're the consumers. Consumers are all the living things that just can't make their own food. So to get the energy they need to survive, they have to eat other living things. And that simple divide, right there, sets up the entire flow of energy on our planet. And, of course, not all diners have the same tastes. We can break consumers down into three basic groups. First, you've got your herbivores. Those are the plant eaters, like a giraffe. Then you have the carnivores, the meat eaters, like a cheetah. And finally, you've got the omnivores, like baboons, who, enjoy a good meal of both plants and animals. So when you put all these different pieces together, the chefs and the different kinds of diners, you get what we call a food chain. And you can just think of it like an energy relay race. It's a sequence that shows exactly how that precious energy gets passed from one organism to the next. Let's just trace that flow for a second. It all kicks off with the sun. A plant, our producer, soaks up that light energy. Then a herbivore comes along and munches on the plant, getting a transfer of that energy. Finally, a carnivore eats the herbivore, and the energy gets passed on one more time. The areas you see here are really important. They don't just show who eats who, they show the direction that energy is traveling. Okay, so an organism has solved the energy problem. It's eaten, it's surviving. What's next? Well, now it's time for the second great quest, creating a legacy. And this isn't about fame or fortune. This is about the deep biological need to pass on your blueprint for life through what we call the life cycle. And believe me, the stakes here could not be higher. It's a simple, kind of brutal fact of nature. If a species doesn't reproduce, it's just gone. It'll disappear forever. The life cycle is nature's beautiful and incredibly varied solution to make sure that life, in all its amazing forms, gets to continue. For a flowering plant, this whole legacy thing is built in a perfect circle. It all starts with just a single seed, germinating in the soil. That tiny seed grows into a mature plant, which eventually produces flowers. Then, through pollination and fertilization, it creates the next generation of seeds. And finally, those seeds get spread around, and the whole beautiful cycle is ready to kick off all over again. Now, the flower itself it's just a marvel of engineering, really. It's perfectly designed for reproduction. The bright petals, they're like big flashy billboards to attract bees and birds. The anther produces the pollen, which are the male cells. The stigma is sticky, designed to perfectly catch that pollen. And the ovary protects those precious seeds while they develop, often growing into a tasty fruit to help them get spread far and wide. But, of course, plants aren't the only ones trying to create a legacy. The animal kingdom has the exact same goal, make the next generation. But their strategies and methods can be wildly different, starting right at the very first step of fertilization. So there's this major split in how animals approach this whole thing. You have internal fertilization, which is common for us mammals and also birds and reptiles, where the sperm is placed directly inside the female's body. And then you have external fertilization, which you see in most fish and frogs.
The female lays her eggs and the male fertilizes them out in the open, usually in the water. This one difference has huge consequences for the rest of the life cycle. So let's take a look at the lion, a classic example of a mammal's life cycle. It starts with internal fertilization. That's followed by a pregnancy of about 100 days where the little embryo develops safely inside its mother. After birth, there's this really long period. We're talking years where the cub is cared for and taught absolutely everything it needs to know to survive, before it's ready to continue that cycle itself. And this gets us to what you might call the mammalian advantage. The embryo is protected inside mom, the younger born live, not left in some fragile egg, and so importantly, they get parental care, milk, protection, and basically a 2-year private education in how to survive. Just compare that to a sea turtle, who lays her eggs and then never sees her young again. It's a completely different strategy for creating a legacy. So we've looked at life's two great quests, the hunt for energy and the drive to create a legacy. But here's the final and most important point. These are not two separate stories. They are deeply, fundamentally woven together. One simply cannot happen without the other. And this is where it all clicks into place. Every single step of the life cycle that we've just talked about, from a flower using energy to produce petals, to a lioness producing milk for her cub, to that cub growing strong enough to hunt for itself, all of it is fueled by the energy acquired through the food chain. Energy is literally the currency that pays for legacy. So you have this flow of energy from the food chain that fuels the entire cycle of legacy. It's a delicate, fragile, perfectly balanced web, which leaves us with one final big question to think about. In this incredibly intricate system, what happens when a single thread is pulled? What are the ripple effects when just one link in that chain of life is broken?